I think personally Bloomberg is the most red billing of all the candidates because he's treating American democracy with the respect it deserves.
Yeah.
Okay. He's like, I'm not going to campaign. I'm not going to do any interviews. I'm not going to sit down with white people at a diner and let them scrutinize me. I'm just going to mobilize a network of black people and brown people and a few elderly people here and there.
And the new media.
And of course, the new media. The new media is not really entirely on board with Bloomberg, but they're more on board than I thought they would be. You're increasingly saying, I saw Katie Couric on Bill Maher, and this bitch was like, "Oh, Bloomberg, he's got the money to beat Trump." I mean, this is now the neoliberals have totally given up on making an argument for their policies. They're just like, let's see if we can cheat the victory.
Right. I mean, the way they
pay to win.
That's something I've noticed.
Games pay to win. Like this is what they see.
Just do microtransactions to beat this level of the election is just like an early level on this board. But
American democracy online.
Yes,
that's the game they're paid to win.
Yeah, it's like you could slog through the level, or you just do microtransactions and win.
There you go.
Or macro transactions, as it may be in America. But it does seem, and the other talking point is they've totally been reduced to can this guy beat Trump? Can this guy beat Trump? And of course, once they seed that into people's minds, the sort of Democrat base, the real activist, liberals and then they don't care about principles anymore. Only principle is beating Trump. And then you will do things like, oh, well, Mike Bloomberg has a lot of money, so he can outbuy Trump. And it's like, all right, well, now here we are, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, they took nothing from the Hillary outspent Trump something like 2-1 and still lost. We're coming to the conclusion now. With Bloomberg, right? We're starting to see something. We're starting to see some symptoms manifesting. The symptoms are America is now a third world country. Okay. The political symptoms out there. This is what Michael Lind says. Michael Lind recently said that, America can go two ways, right? Either the feeling we have now in the society is the final days of the Weimar Republic, and we're going to get a Nazi revolution over the horizon, or it's going to be the Latin American system where you get a populist, and then you get an oligarch, and then you get a populist again, and then you get another oligarch. So I mean that would be kind of I think America, due to its demographics and so on, might be something in between. So. But that's increasingly what it looks like right now. Bloomberg versus Trump. Imagine that, like a fucking a populist nationalist versus on paper versus a truly naked guy with no issues. He's just really rich and able to do it. Like that's it. And
of course, Mike Bloomberg, just like with Joe Biden, this is another interesting thing that people need to scratch their heads and think about. Just like with Joe Biden, they brought out theoretically racist statements he made in the 80s. Yeah. Joe Biden said, what did he say? He talking about the crime bill. I don't care if you had a tough childhood. I don't want you near my family or something like this, or maybe not even quite that tough. Well, Bloomberg said it was 100 times tougher than even what Joe Biden said, of course, because he's Jewish, and they don't care. That's the other thing. Maybe whoever, now that audio has been around, and some of it was put out on a radio show. We played it on the last episode of Striking Mike. If you want to go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Maybe some was out on the radio show. So it wasn't, he's not ashamed of it. He's not hiding it. Okay. No. And it was easy to get your hands on if you were whatever liberal activist. I don't know how that came back out, or some probably people in another camp of another candidate, or maybe some liberal, social media activists or something put this out there to try to embarrass them. It's not going to work. And that person or those people, those of you that thought, Oh, these statements about black crime, Mike Bloomberg is done. Well, you're going to have to reevaluate that, and you're going to have to think hard. And this is what I actually want. And this is what I sort of try to push. This is what I want to do with our propaganda. When things like this happen, you can't explain that with your premises. You have to reevaluate what you think about politics in America when that happens. Because if it's really that if you say something racist, your career is over, which I can understand why people believe that. It's definitely true for a white person.
Yes. Not true for
Why doesn't it happen to Mike Bloomberg? It's more racist than anything I've heard a white politician say in generations.
Yes.
Even going back to the 60s, white politicians didn't say throw blacks up against, well, they might have said it in private, but they didn't say it. If it came out publicly, even then they would have been ruined. So think about it and reevaluate your premises. You know, if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't work, then you have to rethink it. And that's kind of what I push people to think about. How does it work that this supposedly anti-racist who absolutely happily implemented stop and frisk, put black kids that jumped the turnstile in jail, said we got to throw them up against the wall, and is now campaigning specifically for minorities, and it's working? How does that work? How can that be possible? Well, the system
he's getting all of Biden's votes. Like Biden is right. Obviously struggling
because obviously
and all the votes are going to Bloomberg. They're not going to Bernie. They're not going to all these people that aggressively signal and actually do have strong anti-racist credentials. They're not getting any benefit from this. And you know what's funny? This is something that I would challenge when inevitably leftists lose badly. They get ripped off by a combination of Wall Street elites and demographic change, ironically.
Yeah.
Demographics are going not only make it difficult for a nationalist to win, but actually make it just as difficult for a socialist.
Right. This is actually the most ironic thing of all, is that the people that raise the alarm about demographics, which is generally actually paleoconservatives, white nationalists, racist libertarians, like racist Republicans, whatever, race-aware Republicans, you know the types, general milieu. We all know what we're talking about, and they've been raising the alarm bell and trying to warn the Republican Party for years. Who's warning the Democrats? Like, who's out there telling the Democrats, hey, you're not going to be able to get an ideological left winger.
Well, they like you have to warn the Democratic grassroots because
that's what I mean. That's not the party. You have to tell the white Democrat voter who is generally speaking very interested in economic equality.
Right.
That's why generally speaking, there's obviously evil urbanite shit libs like the Matthias and Luke Bryan types that just hate other white people and whatever, or they're just paid off by to be their enforcers. But like the average, white voter for the Democrat Party, they maybe they racial equality sounds good to them, but really economic equality is what they're actually interested in and what they'll talk about passionately. What happens to them? They have to think about this too. Right. They actually are more immediately affected by it because really, in 2016, the people on the right wing side of things that raised that alarm bell, they won, and on the left side of it, you lost. They were more affected by it than we were in 2016 because Bernie lost because of demographics. Yes. Anyway, that's just a little funny thing, and possibly a way to start talking to these people without being without being like sort of ghoulishly racist, but you could just, you have to, at some point you have to. Well,
I think the two issues that are going to be at the forefront for a typical Bernie bro is Jews, power, and non-white voters. Those are the two things that, ironically, will make sure that a Bernie Sanders style candidate will never win. And Bernie Sanders, of course, is a Jew himself. The problem is, though, is that he's not representing. He's like he's a dinosaur. He's a 78-year-old 1930s style communist, and people like Bloomberg just have no use for people like that anymore. So Bernie Sanders is campaigning on his bona fides of marching with Martin Luther King and supporting advanced civil rights legislation back when it was unpopular. Well, Mike Bloomberg's like, remember this nigger, your mayor? Well, he just took money to endorse me. He's got Mike Bloomberg is only second to Joe Biden in terms of endorsements overall. So he's getting a shit ton of endorsements from all these. And if you actually talk to political consultants, they'll tell you that in many cases winning an endorsement from a governor or mayor is more relevant than winning one from a senator or from something like that, in comparison. So, for example, especially with blacks, because blacks see London Breed, the first black mayor of San Francisco, is campaigning for Bloomberg.
Right.
someone actually last November 2019, they actually did a study on the issues Mike Bloomberg supports and his policy positions and so on. Only 12% of people in America would support that series or string of issues together. And this person, it's a woman named Kristen Soltis Anderson, and her firm is Echelon Insights. And on there, she actually plotted out all the different positions if America was a representative democracy, like a parliament type of system. And of course, labor and nationalist and conservative would be the most popular. Meanwhile, the parties that she ascribes to people like AOC would be the Green Party, would be pretty unpopular. And then Michael Bloomberg would be the Acela Party, which would be like this kind of Wall Street, like like culturally libertarian, it's basically libertarianism, but with like selective tyranny. Like they take your guns away and they put you in prison for your ideas and shit and make anti-Semitism illegal and so on. A party like that would only get 12% of popular support.
Right, and that's just an elite. It's just elitist. That's the concern of the elite.
It's quite fascinating. I was reading a study from 1995 by George Borjas, who is probably the most famous of the scholars and academics that studies the economic effect mass immigration has. And Borjas found that, out of, for example, take $1.2 trillion that, immigration contributes to the economy, half of it goes to the 1%, the employers, in terms of labor savings. The other half goes to basically third world countries as remittances, as, things like that. So working people don't benefit at all from that.
No, not at all.
Okay, yeah. Middle class people don't get any benefits from that. So the point is, like, if America's immigration program is some kind of U.S. aid package to the third world, I mean, this is increasingly this is the secret that leftists who defend open borders believe. But then in public, they give like the Cato Institute, like they're like, oh, immigration increases GDP, it's good for the economy.
It's very
but
interesting.
In private, what they really believe, what they really like about immigration, why they're so adamant about defending it, is that it's basically a program of redistribution from working class and middle class white people to the third world. That's what it is. Yes. So instead of U.S. aid coming, if you want to listen, if you're part of the 1% and you are a globalist and you want to help develop the economies of third world countries, why don't you just fucking pay your taxes and then just give that away as foreign aid? Why is it that it has to come from our pockets? We have to get poorer. Our social services have to be crunched. Also, you can go and be self-righteous about it and be like, look at how neoliberalism is under attack, but look at how we brought all these people out of poverty. Yes, by plunging all of us into poverty. How can we wrap this up with the Bloomberg? Let's wrap it up with Disney buying up basically every single major media property in the last 40 years is like now in possession of Disney, run by a bunch of Jews.
Yeah.
And they openly flaunt this. And then we have Michael Bloomberg personally throwing his hat into the race. And again, I think this is the perfect red pill candidate because it really this is the candidate America deserves.
Yeah, I mean, throw blacks up against the wall, Mike Bloomberg getting the black vote.
Yes.
Okay, I want a narrative that explains that because the only one is our narrative. There's only one that actually it's like literally like I'm Bill O'Reilly over here. You can't explain that.
Well, leftists, imagine all the trouble leftists have to go through to just avoid the banal explanation, which is that blacks are dumb and they'll fall for anything.
And Jews have money and power. That's the other one, right? That's the other obvious truth. Jews have money and power and they run politics. And that's why you get Mike Bloomberg, despite saying all these things that trample all over your liberal premises about blacks, he's still getting, not only is he running and not getting pilloried in the media for that, he's getting the black vote.
He's actually number 2 in the nation for the Democrats.
You can't explain that.
And it's largely thanks to his to a lot of support in minority communities.
Right, which he bought.
Which is bought, but that's kind of the point. Like, honestly, the real majority-minority dystopia is going to be just eternal Bloomberg presidencies. That's just what's going to be.
It's not going to be socialism. It's not going. It's not going to be Hugo Chavez putting you in a gulag.
No,
that's not the risk we're up against. Which is why I get a little bit tired of that take, and I also.
And the fear mongering that gets you to vote for Trump too. I mean, look at how the Bernie Bros are
and then the
dealing
victory
with this.
becomes if that doesn't happen, right? Then it's like, well, that's not going to happen. That's not the risk. That's not what we're facing.
No, look at how Bernie Bros are taking the news that the Democratic establishment wants Michael Bloomberg. They're saying, like, if you run this guy, we're not going to vote for him. And the response from the Democratic establishment is like, well, if you vote for Trump again, they're just going to keep putting people in cages, and the Nazis are going to be in power again, and you're going to get Stephen Miller persecuting brown people across the country.
And if you had a Bernie bro with sense, you'd be like, well, wait, but that's not really happening.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing now. And the way the Bloomberg people and the Zionists are approaching these often usually white not Gentile guys that are supporting Bernie is they're saying, well, this is your white privilege talking. They're trying to guilt that, but it's not working. It's not like the way they're framing this is that if you let Trump win again, framing. It's going to be Hitler too.
Yes,
like
he's
going to be unrestricted from any electoral.
This is a very fun Jewish narrative that I remember from 2016. Of where you would get, and sometimes they'll get a black out front, like a mulattis, like a frizzy-haired mulatto girl to come out and say this, where she chastise whites for voting for somebody like a Bernie or a Jill Stein, saying like, because you are white, it doesn't hurt you. Like Donald Trump is going to be president, and even though like you don't like him because of your delicate liberal sensibilities, it doesn't hurt you, but it hurts us. That's a very subversive narrative that they do to undermine actual left-wing politics among whites, where they're like, if you vote on your principles for a Bernie or a Jill Stein, who there's a lot of problems with Jill Stein, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. If you vote in a way that's left of center for the Democrat Party, if you don't vote for the neoliberal candidate, that's a thing that white privileged people get to engage in,
right?
Because it doesn't really matter to you because Donald Trump's not rounding you up, but Donald Trump's not rounding anybody up.
No, he's not. And they know that. And they know that.
And that's the thing. It's like now Bernie bugmen are in a position where they have to admit this because that's the cudgel that they're beating you with. Is if you don't vote for Mike Bloomberg, Trump puts people in cages. Well, now you got to go out and say, well, yeah, but he's not actually doing that.